you just take one thing away from young people in some of these neighborhoods, like the neighborhood I grew up in. You add one thing, and their life will be completely different. You just change one small thing or one or two things, and they won't be out there as part of gangs. They'll be me. You change that about my life, I'll be them.
Brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, I don't know what this world is coming to.
You're listening to the Black and Blue Podcast, a discussion and celebration of the roles of African Americans and other minorities in U.S. law enforcement. Your host on the Black and Blue Podcast is Dale Peters, a law enforcement professional with over 20 years experience in the business. Hop on board this Black and Blue train of interviews, current events, and pop culture conversations. So get ready. The Black and Blue Podcast is coming at you right now. What up, Square Pegs? Welcome to the Black and Blue Podcast, where we celebrate diversity in U.S. law enforcement. If you're new here, my name is Dale. I'm the host. Thank you for stopping by and checking out the show. I hope you like what you see and what you hear. And if you've been here before, welcome back. Can't say enough about how much I appreciate your support. Be sure to keep that positive energy flowing by liking and subscribing to the Black and Blue Podcast YouTube channel or your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to stop by any of our social media pages. You can find us everywhere at Black and Blue US. All right, so today's guest is the Chief of Police out here in the Golden State of California, where the state capital is. Everyone, please help me give a big Black and Blue welcome to Sacramento Police Chief Daniel Hahn. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for coming on to the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. So like I mentioned, you are the police chief in the state capitol out here in California. We're both out here in California. How long you been the chief there?
I've been the chief here for a little over 4 years, starting in 2017.
Okay. And how long you been with Sacramento PD?
30, a little over 34 years. I started in 1987.
Wow. 1987. Wow.
Yep.
Sacramento was just growing then, huh? It was like not that big back then, right?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it did when I was growing up. That's for sure. There's many parts that have, as you say, grew up.
Yeah, no doubt. Are you originally from that area, or where are you from?
Yeah, I was born and raised here. I've lived here my whole life.
Oh, wow. Okay. So is that technically called the Bay, or is it like north of the Bay, or you guys consider yourself the Bay Area?
Oh, yeah, you get in trouble calling it the Bay.
Okay.
This is, yeah, it's about an hour and 20 minutes from the Bay. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's just Northern California, the Valley.
Yeah, the Valley, NoCal. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
In Sacramento, you've got a different kind of way of policing out there. I wouldn't say different, but you got to deal with a lot of politicians, not just from the city, but like I said in the intro here, it's the state capitol, so you have a lot of legislators up there as well. What's that relationship between your police department and the legislature up there?
Yeah, usually the Highway Patrol deals directly with the legislators themselves, but being the capital means that we have protests every day about something. And
Right.
They don't typically stay on the Capitol grounds, so we usually are involved in some way or another. And obviously, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of protests here, not only over social justice, but any number of things. Any given day, there's a protest here, union protest, farmers protesting here, not just people from Sacramento, but all over the state because of the Capitol. People come here to have their voices heard from those legislators that you were talking about.
Right. No doubt. So you guys are busy, I can imagine how busy you guys are. How large is Sacramento PD?
We have about 1,100 members, Right now, it's about 756 officers. About 10 years ago, we had a little over 800, but we're less now, like a lot of departments are,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But yeah, a little bit over 1,100 total.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to kind of bring that up a little bit later, but since you mentioned it, you mentioned that you guys are hurting for bodies just like everywhere else. My department, everyone's hurting for bodies now. What do you attribute that to? What would you think, in your opinion, that is?
Well, originally our staffing was cut when the budget crashed 11, 12 years ago. And it took us that long to start catching up. And so we're just now getting up to where we're authorized, which is about 756 officers. But our authorized staff is not what it used to be because of those budget cuts. And now we're in a time where many, or at least some in our community and across the country, are calling for less police. And so there's not a real desire from a lot of the politicians here in our city to increase the staffing of the police department. Although we have increased it a little bit recently, especially on the professional staff side, because of some of the new legal requirements of releasing video, releasing information. All those things have to be redacted, and that takes people and time. So, but we just haven't gotten back to the staffing that we were 10 years ago. Our city has grown probably about 40,000 people by then. We also have a lot more festivals and a lot more activity in our city than we did then. So it's just a challenge to keep up with just the core of our job.
Yeah, and that's like we were saying, that's the case everywhere. And
Yeah.
a lot of it, yeah, is not just the politicians and budgets, but the will of people that actually want to be police officers nowadays. I remember back in the day, in the in the late '90s and early 2000s. I'm sure you remember lines around the block lining up for police jobs, and now it's kind of hard to find applicants to fill the spots. And then there's all that attrition through the whole hiring process. So if you get 100 people in, you may get one or two out of that 100 to go to an academy class or get hired. So it's tough.
Yeah, we looked at that recently, and about 6 years ago, we had well over 7,000 people apply for police recruit to go to the academy. Last year, I think we had just under 3,000. So over
Wow.
50% reduction in the
Hmm.
number of people that are applying. And as you said, it's about one for every 100 people that apply actually get through the background, the process to go to the academy. And obviously, we lose people in the academy too, and in field training after that. So yeah, it's tough, and I think we make a mistake if we just keep trying to do the same things in regards to recruiting. In light of it's not a real popular job. I talk to people all the time that say I've wanted to be a police officer all my life or a portion of my life, but nah, I'm not doing it now, just
Yeah.
because of all the things that are going on with protests or the death threats towards officers, spreading their family pictures all over the internet and things like that. So what we've done is we went to our council and increased the number of part-time entry-level positions like community service officer, student trainee. We do not have a problem getting those positions, and they are very, very diverse. And then they transition eventually into being police officers and dispatchers and things like that. So we've been very successful with that. We still have a hard time recruiting in general, but I think that's going to be the wave of the future. I don't see, thousands and thousands or the lines around the block applying for police officers coming back anytime soon.
Nah, not like you used to. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so you've noticed, you said earlier that you've been on the job for 30 years. So what was your journey in the police work like? Did you always want to be a police officer? Did you kind of fall into the position? What was your journey like?
That's a that's a good question. No, I never wanted to be a police officer.
Yeah.
It's actually more than not wanting to be a police officer. It never crossed my mind to be a police officer. I grew up in a neighborhood called Oak Park here in Sacramento, and When I grew up during the 70s, 80s, during the crack epidemic, our neighborhood was probably the most violent in Sacramento at the time. The first street gangs originated in the neighborhood when I was basically in junior high. Um, I witnessed my first homicide when I was 9 years old in front of our house, where my brother and I were the only witnesses to a guy that got shot multiple times. We lived right on the prostitution stroll and a very busy corner for drugs and things like that. And in my neighborhood, police officers were not real popular. I didn't hate police officers, but I was arrested for assault on an officer when I was 16. But I didn't hate police officers. Just I don't think it crossed anybody's mind to be a police officer in our neighborhood. We didn't know any officers. The officers weren't held in high regard in our neighborhood. I can remember a couple times just running or quickly leaving a corner when we saw a cop come down the street, not because I was doing anything wrong, just I didn't want to be standing on the corner when the officers got there. So again, I didn't hate police officers, but I mean, it wasn't a real popular thing to do in our neighborhood. So, I was thinking about being an auto mechanic, construction worker, teacher, those sort of things. But I was in junior college right after high school when I was 18 years old, and I took a criminal justice class because a friend of mine told me it was easy and it sufficed for a general ed requirement. So recruiters from Sac PD came by. I literally handed them the paperwork back several times. And in my mind, I didn't say this out loud, but in my mind, I was saying, I'm not like the rest of these suckers in this class because I don't want to be a cop. I'm just doing it because it's an easy class. But then I finally held on to the paperwork, and a few days later, I called my buddy and asked him how much they pay. And it was like $5 an hour more than I was making at the mall at the time. And I'm 18 years old. I mean, I thought I was going to be rich, $5 an hour.
Right. Yep,
and so, I mean, back then we were making $3 and some cents an hour, and to go to the academy is $8.14 an hour. I still remember the amount right now. And so I eventually decided to go just solely for the money. I wish I could say I was going because I wanted to change the world, but my plan was to go to the academy. And by the time the academy started, I was 19. I got into a fight while I was in background, so I'm surprised I passed background. And my plan was to go to the academy, become a community service officer because I wasn't old enough to be a police officer, and finish college and then quit and go be a teacher and start my own business. My degree, I don't even have a criminal justice degree. My degree is in business. And so it took me a while. I was on the 9-year plan to graduate college. So by the time I was ready to graduate, I had been a neighborhood police officer in a neighborhood called Strawberry Manor. And then I actually started the Criminal Justice Academy at Grant High School. By the way, Grant High School is the first Northern California school to win the Open Division football championship against a school I think you probably know very well, Long Beach Poly. We were big underdogs. And we beat them in the very first Open championship game. So I taught there for 3 years at the Criminal Justice Academy, getting to do what I had always planned on doing as a teacher. And through all that, I decided I could do what I love to do as a police officer. But see, growing up, I just thought police officers drove around and arrested people and gave tickets, and that didn't really appeal to me. But once I got in the police department, I've been a teacher, I've been a neighborhood police officer, I've been a media PIO, I've been in charge of all the undercover people. I've done all these things that I never even knew you could do when I was growing up watching police cars drive down our streets. And so 34 years later, I'm the police chief in a job that I never even thought I would ever do more than a year or two.
Yeah, see, that's what it's about. It was something that you didn't think that could happen to you, and it kind of fell into your lap. And a lot of people, just like you just said, don't know that all the things that entail in the police department. And like you said the PIO, but there's canines, and we got larger departments. You got the air services unit. You've got all these different units. Horses. I'm sure you guys got horses for crowd control. You guys got all kinds of sort of stuff. So If you
Yeah,
like
we
it, it's
got
probably there.
boats,
Yeah.
motorcycles, horses, helicopters,
Wait a
and
minute, you
all of
guys
these
got
we train
water?
you how to.
You guys
Oh
got
yeah,
water in
yeah, we
Sacramento?
got two big rivers that go through our city right
Okay,
downtown. So
okay.
we have a marine unit, and that's why I tell when I talk to high school kids and elementary school kids, I tell them um, quit thinking about a particular job, which is what we always get asked growing up. What do you want to be? But I tell them to think about what they're passionate about, and if it helps to think about whatever job they've been thinking about, then think about why they want that job. What about that job appeals to them? What are they passionate about? And once you figure out what you're passionate about, it might open doors to jobs that you never thought you would have. And now looking back after 34 years, there's no job I could have ever had that would have been better than this job. It's what I like to do, being
Yep.
outside, having some freedom, and those sort of things. And I always mention my brother. My brother is 5 years older than me. Great student all his life, straight A student, went to UC Berkeley. Um, Really super smart, way smarter than I ever was. I didn't get anywhere near the grades he got. Really good human being, good person. Um, but he's perfectly happy sitting in a cubicle by himself all day long, working on a computer. I mean, he has the first computer I ever saw in my life. When we were growing up, nobody had computers, but he had one in his room.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I learned how to type on an actual typewriter in high school. I
Yeah.
mean, we didn't have
Here.
computers. Nobody
Yeah.
had
Me too.
computers,
Yep.
yeah, except he had a computer. And so, um, and my mom would be challenged to get him out of the house, to stop doing homework, stop working on his computer, stop doing stuff in his room. Her challenge with me was to get me in the house. I always wanted to be outside. Like
Yeah.
she had to put me on
Yeah.
restriction to get me to stay in the house.
Right.
So even such a great person he is and so intelligent, um, he would have not been a bad police officer. Um, but what he likes to do, he would have been miserable. Like he doesn't have the longest fuse in the world. You can
Oh,
piss him
really?
off pretty quickly. And I could just only imagine at protests or some of the stuff that I've seen and been through. He'd have been, he wouldn't have hurt anybody, but he'd have been completely unhappy and frustrated,
Yeah. Yep.
and not able to handle it the way I handle it. Conversely, I would be miserable sitting in a cubicle with nobody, no human interaction, sitting
Yep.
inside, working on a computer. So he followed his passion, and he's been amazing at what he does. I followed, even though I didn't know anything about being a police officer and never thought of it, and landed into it kind of by happenstance. It was the best thing career-wise that could have ever happened to me.
Yeah. And you know what? Even though you mentioned, that your brother was different from you, and he was more on the analytical computer side. Yeah, I love hearing those stories because us as people of color, we're not a monolith. People seem to
Right.
think out there, especially in the media, all we can do is play sports or act or dance or something like that, and maybe be a police officer and maybe do some other things, but they don't see us as computer engineers, scientists, all those sorts of things.
Right.
So yeah, I love hearing those
Yeah,
stories as well.
that's the other thing I tell these kids. Don't let anybody tell you can't do something.
Yep.
I mean, our kids they can do whatever they want if they get the right support, and I've been lucky. I was adopted, and my mom was amazing, and my life would be completely different if I hadn't been adopted by my mom and dad. Even with all the things that I did see, my dad dying at a young age, all those things, still, I was very lucky to have the support of my mom and all the support that she brought into my life. And so you just take one thing away from young people in some of these neighborhoods, like the neighborhood I grew up in. You add one thing, and their life will be completely different.
Yeah.
You just change one small thing or one or two things, and they won't be out there as part of gangs. They'll be me.
Mm-hmm.
You change that about my life, I'll be them.
Yep.
I mean, a lot of my, half my friends ended up in prison or shot or, going down those roads, and half my friends are doing exactly what they want to do now. And it's interesting to see because, I'm in my 50s now, so all my friends are in their 50s, and so even the ones that went to prison, they're done with that life now, right? They're out
Yeah.
of prison, they're doing good now, and talking to them, it usually comes back to, how things were when we were young, and what we had or what we didn't have that was a big contributor to which road we went down.
A lot of it is family. That's where it starts. Your mom keeping you, your mom or your dad or whoever you got, grandparents, extended family, whatever, trying to keep you on the straight and narrow. And if you don't have that, you look to it somewhere else, and that could be, the dudes out on the street.
Yeah, I sure did hate it when I was a kid, but I am very grateful that it was there now.
Yeah, you know what, my son, we just had to talk about that the other day, and it wasn't as grand as staying out of trouble and all that sort of stuff, but we just talked about all the family stuff we used to do when they were little, and how they used to hate it. And then now that he's in college now, he's like, wow, I miss that stuff. I'm glad that we did that. Let's go let's go have dinner together and all that sort of stuff. So
yep, we all come back around eventually.
We all do. We all do. We all do, because at that point, when you're a teenager or whatever, you're just thinking about, you and your friends and, you. And then later on, you start to realize what's important. So, he's only 19 and he's realizing that. So I'm grateful for that.
He came around early.
He came around real early. Yeah,
good, good.
Speaking of family, I see you got your pictures back there. A beautiful family back there. Who's that we got back behind you?
That's my wife and our two daughters. Matter of fact, today is our anniversary.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. How many years?
18 years.
18 years. Congratulations to that.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Hahn as well. Yeah. How'd you two meet?
We met through a actual magazine. I was highlighted in a magazine many moons ago, and no, it was Sacramento magazine actually, and they featured like 30 young and up and coming single kind of people, and she wrote a letter to me.
Oh wow, that's stuff made in movies right there, huh? That's something I could see, like J-Lo and and Ben Affleck, doing a movie about that,
or J-Lo and anybody.
Yeah, right? J-Lo and me. If my wife is watching this part, just disregard that. Just disregard that part right there. Yeah.
It's just hypothetical, I'm sure.
Just hypothetical. Hey, she's got her crushes too, and whatever. So we were just we went to last night we went to a Black Panther concert at the Hollywood Bowl, and it was pretty cool. They had the symphony playing and everything. And, when they showed the clips of Michael B. Jordan, when he comes out with that first scene, he takes off his shirt and everybody's like, ooh, and she's doing the same thing. Like, all right, whatever. Yeah, I'm not in my 30s anymore either, so.
Nope.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you don't have a degree in criminal justice. You've got it in business administration. Same with me as well. I've got an accounting degree. My bachelor's, and then my master's is in organizational leadership, which is, what you can use in law enforcement. But I try to tell, when I was an FTO, and even mentor, as an SRO, kids, yes, go to college, but I try to discourage them from getting criminal justice degrees. Get something else and something else that you like, whether it be business or computer engineering or biology or something, because I tell these kids, if you get injured tomorrow or 2 years on the job as a police officer and you need to get a job doing something else, it ain't going to get criminal justice isn't going to get you a job out there, because for one, you won't have the experience to go teach, right? You've only got 2 years on, and so you're not going to have the life experience and the work experience to go teach at a university or a college or something. So you need a real job. So go get something else, and you can still use that in law enforcement. I've used my accounting degree in financial investigations. I get called to do those sorts of things on task forces in my own department. So, like you said earlier, don't think about the profession. Think about, what you can do with it once you get into law enforcement, because we've got a wide range of things you can do here.
Yeah, I tell people to get a degree in what they're passionate about. I guess that could be in criminal justice. But if you're really good in math and you really like math, then go get a degree in something like that. To me, in the police department, the important thing is the fact that you have a degree, which means that you were able to complete something. that you were able.
Yes.
I know if you have a degree, that meant you did homework on time, you went to
Mm-hmm.
class, and you did it for a long period of time, and you met certain standards, which is what we're about, right? You need to be consistent. You need to show up to work. You need to be able to finish a project and those sort of things. And so, to me, I don't care what your degree's in. I care that you have a degree. And so, like, for example, I teach criminal justice at Sac State. I teach a police and society class, but I don't use a criminal justice book. I teach a lot of history and how law enforcement was part of that history, impacted that history. I bring a lot of guest speakers into the class from all different walks of life. On Thursday, I'm going to have a guy that did 21 years in prison come speak to the students. I
Oh,
have
wow.
an activist, a community activist that advocates for police reform and all sorts of things. She comes and speaks to the class. I have a woman that was trafficked or works in the community saving women from being trafficked come speak to the class. So I try to give them a well-rounded experience that, yeah, it's related to criminal justice because it's a criminal justice class, but I think we get so narrow focused.
Yeah.
Like you said, with your accounting degree, uh, I, I want a police department that has officers and professional staff that has all sorts of degrees, because all that comes with experience. And the more experiences we have, the more we're going to be able to solve the various problems that we are called upon to solve. So I remember one of the guys that I went through the academy with, he was from a different department. He ultimately became the police chief of the other department, but he had a degree in like molecular biology or something like that. People used to say, what the heck's that got to do with law enforcement? But he ultimately became the police chief, and
Hey,
smart,
I think that
obviously
might be able
got
to
to be a
help out
smart
in
guy.
homicide investigations, right?
Right, right,
Yeah.
right, right.
So yeah, you never know. Earlier, let's go back to when we were talking about you not really wanting to be a police officer because, I mean, you didn't really have anything against them, but you just didn't think about that. Was that maybe because, this shows black and blue officers of color? Did you see officers of color back in, when you were younger? No.
No, and I mean, we had an officer on our campus uh, from the school police department, and then obviously we saw police officers in our community every day. But I don't ever recall seeing a black police officer. And I don't ever recall, well, not recall, it just never happened, any police officer just talking to us.
Oh.
I mean, it wasn't like an officer drove by and cussed us out or anything, but I never had an interaction with police officers that was just a normal interaction, talking and, hey, what's going on? And being able to learn about what they do. That never happened. So, the fact that police officers weren't held in high regard in my neighborhood, the fact that there was really nothing to go against that. Like, I never had a conversation with a police officer. I mean, I saw the officer at school. He never did anything wrong. People seemed to like him, but I never had a conversation with him. It wasn't like I wanted to go have a meet and greet with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't ever recall any of my friends ever talking about being a police officer, ever. And I'm the only one in my family as a police officer. I'm really the only one of my friends that I grew up with that became a police officer. So it just was happenstance.
Yeah. And then, so now coming up, you being the chief and all your positions before then, does your department kind of promote that now to get out the cars and, even patrol to get out the cars and kind of talk to people so that, kids like you were coming up, would actually see and speak to a police officer?
Yeah, and I think that's all of our responsibility, not just in a specialty unit that's one of the
Right.
core functions of that unit, but just everybody. But I'll tell you, the challenge to that is this whole uh, uh, staffing issue that is pretty much across the entire country, some even worse than here. Um, when you're going from call to call and they're big calls, shooting calls, assault calls, domestic violence calls, you don't have the time to spend on even one of those calls you go to, because there's 5 more pending that the sergeant or the dispatcher is saying, hey, we got priority calls pending. So it's a challenge with staffing even to do what we want the officers to do. If it's so busy, you don't literally have the time to do it.
Yeah. And then that's when, kind of time management, or even when you're on those calls, kind of make those connections. I know you got to be sensitive and all that sort of stuff. If you're at a shooting or I was going to say 261, but not everyone in the country knows that, or, a rape or something like that, you kind of make those connections on a domestic with the both halves of the equation, with the children, all that sort of stuff, so that, they can say later on, yes, I had a conversation. It was the worst time of my life, and this officer was sympathetic and was able to handle his job professionally. So, and
Yeah, it's
those are
amazing
kind
the
of things that
stories you
stick in people's
hear.
minds too.
Yeah, just those little things, they make a big difference. People just
Yeah,
feeling like you cared on a call, even though it might have been just an extra 5 minutes, or something you said, or just the way you act, or the empathy that you showed. But I also think we all, as a society, not just the community, but police officers, the community, um, businesses, have to change what we believe um, the role of police officer is, or at least slightly modify. I mean, I'm sure this has happened to you. It's happened to me many times, and I just laughed it off when I was a young officer. But now I stop, and I try to compassionately correct people, where they go, "Hey, if you don't do what I say, I'm gonna tell that officer right there," like a mom or a dad
yeah,
saying that to their
yeah,
kids,
yep,
and they're gonna come get you. And I'll stop now, and I'm like, "Wait, hold on a second. I'm not gonna come get anybody." Like, you know,
yeah,
be a parent, do your job. Don't stop saying that because the kid isn't listening to you, you're going to call the police department because they kept begging for a Snickers bar at the store or something. That's not what we do. But as a society, the fallback for everything, when some portion of society fails, whether it's the mental health system or any other portion of society fails, the fallback is always the police department. So we have to fix some of these other things. I mean, we have issues in law enforcement too. Don't get me wrong, but we can't just look at it solely as law enforcement. Else, what we've done for the last 3, 4, 500 years, and the frustrations that our community has, um, will continue to play out as we see them today. Protests in the street; those have been happening for hundreds of years, and because we do not address the root of the issue.
yeah, yeah. And we mentioned earlier that, being Sacramento PD, you guys have lots of protests, and I'm sure they were amped up in 2020 due to George Floyd and all that sort of stuff. How did that kind of affect your department, the George Floyd incident?
Well, they were tough. The year before that, we were dealing with protests related to an officer-involved shooting that we had here in our city with our
Mm-hmm.
officers, the Stephon Clark
Yeah,
shooting. So we had protests that were pretty regular on that, and then the George Floyd protests really ramped up with looting and attempting to light buildings on fire and things like that. None of our buildings burned. Nobody was seriously injured or killed. So really proud of our officers and department. But yeah, it was tough. And then that followed. It's interesting just talking about societal norms and biases and things. But so as the core George Floyd protests started to um, slow down a little bit, then we started having protests that were essentially Proud Boys versus Antifa every Saturday, where they're trying to beat each other up. And so we would have, almost 200 of our officers attempting to stay in the middle of them. And so they would move all over downtown. We'd be running around trying to stay in the middle of them. But what's interesting is those protests didn't get covered in the media. The George Floyd protests did, but those protests didn't. Now, those protests were largely white, younger people, I would say, for the most part, on both sides. And the early George Floyd protests were very diverse. Yet the media didn't cover the second group. And so I've done a few interviews and wrote an op-ed about, why is that? Why is it that we can have almost 200 officers, mainly on overtime, on the weekends, standing in the middle, basically being assaulted as one group tries to get at the other, and it's not even covered for 2 seconds on the news.
No
Not
coverage.
one story for months that occurred.
Yeah, yeah, and we see that all over media picking and choosing the stories, and we know which ones that they're picking and choosing, really for clicks, right?
Well, and this isn't 100% of it, but historically, starting in slavery times and before, this whole belief that black people were savages and violent is only reinforced by that selective coverage. So when the protesters are diverse, you have
Yeah,
it on every news station for hours running. You have reporters in the middle of it covering it. And so it shows a lot of this violence, but when it's two groups that are largely white that are the only reason they're there is for violence against each other, it's not showed at all. So you're reinforcing these stereotypes by what we choose to cover and what we choose to not.
yeah. Something funny because they always make jokes about it. Comedians do. I've always hated when there's a crime scene and the news gets out there and they want to interview Joe Blow on the street, and the one
I
that
already
they
know what you're
get.
going to say.
Man, they was coming by, and I saw all I heard was pop, 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 and then it's like, come on, man, can't you just get someone to say?
I always say,
Just
man, why
yeah,
they got to find that dude?
yeah, right, right. And then some of them go viral, like the one that said, "I ain't got nobody got time for that." Remember that one
Yeah,
with the
right,
fire?
right.
Oh Lord,
With
there
the
was a
fire, yeah.
fire. Yeah, so
Yes.
they can be funny,
Yeah.
but they kind of perpetuate that stereotype as well.
Right.
When you don't just get the
Right.
guy like you or I on there that says, yes, these guys came out and all of a sudden they did this. They don't want to hear that. They want
Right.
the
Right.
sensational. They
Right.
want that. So yeah, that's kind of weird. So anyway, so with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all that sort of stuff that happened, a lot of these viral videos that went out, and again, going back to the media, are your officers kind of like hesitant to kind of do something that they should do because they don't want to be the next viral video, even if it's a justified shooting or a justified use of force? You find a lot of officers hesitating doing what they should do because they don't want to go viral.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I think there could have been more, but we tried to really communicate, especially with some of the laws, changing a word here and a word there, especially in California. The officers are like worried that they don't know the rules. Right? Like
Yeah.
what are the rules that I abide by? Can I no longer defend my own life? We had that here in Sacramento where it was going to be before you can consider any deadly use of force, you must utilize all your less lethal force first, and it must not work. And then you can consider using your deadly force. And it just so happened at around that same month, we had an officer that was responding to a call where a guy walks up to his passenger window before he can ever get out of the car and he shoots him.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, it hit him in the side near waist level, and it hit him in his vest. But under some of these proposals, he would have had to pepper spray the guy or try to tase the guy before he could defend his life. And so I think more so than the protests, because as volatile as the protests are and as hard as the protests are to deal with and work within in the moment, those aren't the lasting things. The lasting things are the reaction a lot of times from society or the political system to kind of completely switch to the opposite without
Mm-hmm.
proper research. And like I said before, we have work to do in law enforcement. We absolutely do. I mean, over the last 3 months, I think I've arrested 4 of our own officers, have many officers on admin leave. So we are far from perfect or even where I think we could be. But at the same time, everybody deserves to know what the rules are. And everybody deserves even well thought out rules. And to say that a police officer can basically never respond with deadly force until they've tried all the other stuff, there's some
Yeah.
circumstances that would be appropriate for it.
Yes.
But a lot of circumstances that would not be appropriate, and officers are going to get killed. In addition, community people are going to get killed.
Yeah.
If an officer, and one of the examples I used during that time was a school active shooter. Like, so
Right.
here's a guy running around school actively shooting kids, and you're telling me I got to try to taser him before I can.
No.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
you're going to
Yeah.
get people killed. The officer is not going to go into that situation because if they know, well, I can't even defend my own life. Like, so, I mean, it ended in a good spot. But the intention was not to end there. And so I
Right.
think the bigger concern for officers is what are the rules and what are people going to do to me if I get into a life or death situation? And so
That
one of
part.
the things we've done is overly communicate with our officers of what our rules are, what the state rules are, and to try and they're still concerned about not knowing the rules. I mean, you can't
Yeah.
communicate enough, can't be open enough. Um, because what I always say is like the rules right now, if you violate the rules, we've shown over the last several months, we will arrest you. I don't care who you are. Rules are rules. They apply to all of us. So if you
Yeah.
violate the rules, I'm gonna arrest you. Even if you have a badge and a gun on, you're going to jail. So I think the bigger thing for officers is just um, what they feel like is the ever-changing landscape or rules, and kind of this not take in police officers' perspective or reality into consideration when you make these rules. And so they're just not really applicable when you actually go out into the street and try to
Right.
do our job. Here's the reality. A lot of what we do is not life or death situations, not a use of force kind of situation. Most of the calls we go on are not ones where we will end up having to seriously consider shooting somebody. I've been shot at, but I've never shot my gun outside of the range or training. And I've been doing this for 34 years. But that element is out there. And we ask our officers to run towards danger while everybody is running away from danger. And so we have to take that into consideration. Should not be creating an environment where you're a good chance you're gonna die if you're a police officer and you go into that. So um, we always go from one extreme to the other instead of doing some good research and have good conversation and make some rules that are the best for all people. I mean, I'm sure you are just like me. I hate seeing these videos from
Yeah.
cities around the country where officers are shooting people. Even the ones that I can watch, I'm like, I bet you that one's completely legal because of the circumstances. Even those are horrible to watch. And so
Yeah.
if we had the ability to do something else, even if it was legal, we should be researching that. But there are times where there is no alternative. In the last couple
Right.
of years, we've had uh, officers on traffic stop where the suspect just immediately jumps out of the car and starts shooting at the officer. You don't have a lot of options there. The drone isn't
Right.
applicable. The
No.
pepper ball isn't applicable. You better
No.
shoot back or you're going to be dead. Uh,
Yep.
I mean, that's just the reality. And I think sometimes we don't want to admit that, but that is reality.
Yeah. That is reality. And as far as your department and transparency with the community, are you guys really good on your transparency? I know your PIO and even you yourself post a lot on social media about incidents and things of that nature. What's your policy and what's your thoughts on transparency with the community in Sacramento?
Yeah, we were releasing videos before the state law changed, and so we try to get out if we have an officer involved shooting. We try to get out the initial videos, the core videos that show what happened within a week, and then within 30 days we get out the vast majority of the other videos. And even if it's not an officer involved shooting, if there's some things that have happened in the community that are now of concern that have risen to the level of concern, we'll put out that video too. I remember at one time a couple of years ago, we were chasing a young man and like a 15 or 16-year-old kid for some relatively minor stuff, but he ran from the officers. And so one of the backup officers came flying around the corner and ultimately hit the kid with the squad car. Basically on accident. He lost control of the car. And the video was pretty horrific looking. Luckily, the kid was not significantly injured. But I mean, he went flying through the air and the car slid into the front yard of a house. I think it ended up being his house. And so that was getting a lot of play. And the community was getting really concerned about it. So we put out the video of it. And at first, a lot of the officers, I think, were concerned because on the video we said that is not in keeping with the standards of our department. And we are doing an investigation on it. And we put the video out. And, it's one thing to put a video out that you look really good. It's another thing to put a video out when you did something wrong and you say you did something wrong. But I tell you what, we didn't have any protests over it. And people appreciated our honesty. I don't think anybody's going to trust you as a police department if you never say you do anything wrong, because we all do stuff wrong. Nobody's perfect. And so in order to build trust, you have to, whichever way it is, you're going to talk about it. And so we put it out. I think the officer was better off for it. We dealt with what he or he did wrong. And there was no protest. He wasn't blasted all over the place. And we can correct our actions and be transparent about it. So we put a lot of video out. We have a lot of information on our website. We've invited Stanford University and Washington State and CPE and all these other organizations into our department to evaluate. But when they are done with their reports, we put that on our website so everybody can read it. We put if they have like a list of Department of Justice had, I think, 60 some recommendations. So we put each one of those recommendations on our website, and we put what we've done with each one of those recommendations. So people, they can see, okay, they recommended you do this. Now we implemented the vast majority of them, but some of them we didn't. And so we put right on there why we didn't. Right. And so, yeah, I think it's important. It's not the whole thing, but it's pretty important to be transparent. So, look, we don't have anything to hide. We make mistakes. I'll tell you right now, we make mistakes. We're not perfect, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah. I know one of the criticisms that I've heard is that when there's a critical incident, say with the police and someone else, that we will go out there and put out a video or talk about the suspect's background and history and all that, but when it seems to be the other way around, we won't put out the videos and the information right away because the investigation's pending still. We're still investigating it, and the community isn't too keen on that because, like I said, when it's the other way around, that information gets out yesterday.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I agree with them when they say that. It is weird. I don't know why we do that. I mean, I know why we do it. We've always done it. But so when we have an officer involved shooting, we don't talk about their history at all, ever. And the media is the worst one. They call repeatedly, what's his history? What's his history? And I just say, go on the Superior Court website and you can see all his history. His history has nothing to do with that moment when an officer decided to shoot or not shoot. So therefore, we're not talking about it, ever. And we don't put out photos either anymore. We don't put out mugshots anymore. Unless we have a reason to put out a mugshot. Like if we're looking for somebody, then we'll put out the mugshot. Or if we arrest somebody that we think might have other victims, and we think by the community seeing his photo might recognize him and call us on other victims, we'll put that out. But those are pretty rare. So, and the people that call us the most are the media. Hey, put out that mugshot. Nope. Why? What's the purpose of putting out the mugshot? To oftentimes reinforce stereotypes. You want the mugshot, go to court. You can take your own picture. That we are focused on keeping our community safe. and solving crimes. In this case, solving crimes. We've solved it. His photo means nothing. It will not help with the investigation. It will not do any of that. So therefore, we're not putting it out. So yeah, we treat an officer involved shooting, as you might imagine. That's probably, I would guess, as a family of my younger brother was murdered, not by the police, but was murdered. It was really bad, and I imagine it's even worse if they are shot by a police officer. So it's probably the worst day or worst time of any family's life. And a lot of times, maybe the family's dysfunctional. Maybe there's a lot of criminal history or things associated with either the suspect or the family. One, we don't talk about it. Two, we treat the family the same no matter what their background is. We never release a video before they see it. We give them a thumb drive with all the videos. We invite them in to watch the video with us. Sometimes I've done it at their church, so they have a support system after they've watched surely the most horrific video they've ever seen in their life. They're very graphic videos because we have video of everything now. And then we answer all their questions, and we created a new position for one of our detectives that we call like the victim advocate detective. So he's a police officer, been a detective for probably 25 years. He connects with the family on officer involved shootings and like third party homicides in the community. Because what I've noticed the most is when families go through losing a loved one, and it happens way too frequently in the community, not involving a police officer, their biggest frustration is the system. When is the court date? How do I get his property back? All these different things that they get bounced from phone number to phone number. And so I was getting frustrated with the fact that we're like re-victimizing these families. And sometimes maybe we're okay with it because of their history, because of where they live. And I don't care, you could be the biggest gang member of the world, but when your son dies, that's still your son, regardless of what you were into. And so this detective now has been amazing with the families. They're still mad if it's officer involved shooting. They're still very upset with the officers that were actually involved in the shooting. But a lot of times their respect for the department grows. And so the legitimacy of our department increases because we're treating people with dignity and respect. And we never let a video go out before the family gets a copy of it. And sometimes they choose not to watch it, but they have the ability to watch it before they see it on the 5 o'clock news. And I'll give you an example for one of our ones a few years back, the Stephon Clark shooting. I see that video on the news from time to time. Like every, 6 or 7 months, I see the video on the news, replaying it because something happens that maybe relates to that incident. And I'm just thinking, man, if mom or grandma is just sitting at home watching the news, minding their own business one night, and all of a sudden that story comes up, like that's got to be tough. I do think there's some things that need to change about video release and things like that. But we treat families with respect and dignity, no matter what the circumstances are.
That's awesome. Yeah. But I was going to bring up as well, officer rights, POBARs. How does that play into, for the viewers, Peace Officer Bill of Rights, how does that play into releasing information about officer involved incidents?
It really doesn't play much a role. I think the Police Officer Bill of Rights gets a bad name, and I do think there's some things that need to change about the Police Officer's Bill of Rights. But I think a lot of people try to make Police Officer Bill of Rights into something that it's not. I mean, the biggest thing that the Police Officer Bill of Rights is it lays out the rights that an officer has when they're under investigation for some sort of wrongdoing. They have right to be notified. They have a right to have an attorney. They have all these rights. That's the biggest part POBR does. Mm-hmm. And why wouldn't we want everybody to have those rights? I mean, a common everyday citizen has that right. I can't just go interview a citizen if they say they want to talk to their lawyer first. I have to stop. So But what I do think police officer Bill of Rights need to change, at least as a beginning, is the release of information if they're terminated. And I've said this before at the Capitol and other places. I think if an officer is terminated, their file, like in 1421 says, if you're an officer involved shooting or some sort of sex crime or you were dishonest in internal affairs, your file in its entirety gets released publicly. I think that should be expanded to everybody that's terminated. And obviously termination means they've gone through their appeals rights. So their Skelly hearing and those other things, and it's been upheld. Well, their file should be released. Like, it's hard to fire an officer. It's not, I mean, you have to truly do something wrong to get fired. And so instead, in some of the cases where I've terminated officers and they're big public cases, all I can say is they don't work here anymore. Literally, that's all I can say. I can't say I fired them. And so the reporters, rightfully so, ask you, well, did they just retire and they're sipping sarsaparillas on beach in Cancun? Or did you terminate them? And I literally have to say, I can't tell you, even though they got terminated.
Right.
Like, it seems crazy to me that now people that already distrust the police department, they are going to assume they didn't get fired. And they're going to know what happened, and they're going to go, that person should have been fired, and they didn't fire him. When in reality, that's exactly what happened.
That's exactly.
And so I think, and you know, from a union perspective, why do you care if that person's can't be a police officer anymore? Same thing with decertification. I agree with that. But it needs to be done right. Officers need to know the rules. They need to know what the process is. There needs to be established process and appeals and all the things like we have in every other aspect of our life. But once those things are done, I think you should be decertified. They do it with teachers. They do it with a lot of other walks of life. They probably do it with pilots, I would guess. Yeah. So I think they should. Now, granted, it won't make any difference here in my department and probably in your department and any other major department, because any lateral officer that we have in our backgrounds, we go to their old department and they have to sign their rights away, else we won't even do a background. And so they all sign a paper saying, I withdraw my rights to privacy, and we drive to their old department and we go through their internal affairs file, we go through their personnel file. So if they had gotten fired, we will know about it. Now, there are some departments that don't do that, usually real small, tiny departments, but all the major departments, LAPD, your department, my department, they all do that. So decertification won't make any difference to us, but it will make it consistent across the entire state that you will know, and it won't be up to the department, because if you're on that list, you can't be hired. Right. So I guess we could still hire somebody right now if we wanted to that was terminated from, say, your department. We wouldn't. I would never hire somebody that just got terminated as a police officer. But I think those are good things to do. I think that's progress if we did those things. And some of those are tied to POBR.
Yeah, I would think here, at least here in California, and 90% of the agencies out here, if you've been terminated, they wouldn't hire you, even though they have the right to right now. But I guess this comes from mainly probably back east or down south, those small departments, or the someone's the chief, their dad or their uncle's the chief, or they know somebody there, and then they get hired even though they were fired at another department. So those sorts of things can happen.
So
and I'm sure
it would make it more consistent.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I love everything that we talked about today. Got some real good stuff. You about to hang it up here pretty soon, right? As the police chief, what's your date?
I am. I announced my retirement for the end of the year.
Oh wow, end of the year. So it's going to be end of an era. Let me tell you that. How do you feel about that?
I actually feel really good about it. I mean, it'll be a little weird. I've been doing this for 34 years. It's like I don't know how to do anything else. But it's time. Change is not bad. Change is good. It's time for me to go do something else. I'm not ready to sit on the couch yet, so I'm in the process of trying to figure out what I'm going to do after, come January. But I thought this was a good time, 34 years. We're not in the middle of a ton of turmoil right now. So I thought it was a appropriate, good time, both for the department, the city, and for myself.
How's your department succession plan? Is it pretty much in place? And what's going on? Does the city have to go through some processes for your replacement?
That they will go through a process. I think we have highly qualified people inside the department, and the city manager is awesome. So I'm sure he will find somebody good, and I think he has the ability to do it inside the department. But that's a challenge that we are going to be in for several years in law enforcement. In the fact that in June, I think the Major City Chiefs Association said a third of the police chiefs have left between January and June of this year. And obviously, we're in September, so many more have left since then. I know here, one of our suburban chiefs just left last week. Stockton just announced his retirement for the end of the year. Long Beach just announced his retirement at the end of the year. So there's a lot more since June. And if you talk to recruiters, they're not having a good time finding competent replacements, especially in the major cities, the large cities, because people they don't want to do that anymore. They don't want to go through what you have to go through as a police chief. I mean, as I mentioned in many of the interviews when I announced, I've had police officers guarding my personal home way too many days these last couple of years because there was death threats on me and my family and protest threats for our home. And as we all know, over the last year and a half, my daughters are 16 and 14 now, so like 12 and 14 when COVID started. And my wife is a school teacher, so she would be at work. I would be at work. And our daughters are at home on their laptops going to school on Zoom while these threats with my personal address being out there. And so, it didn't used to be like that. But now I have to, call my daughters every hour. Hey, we have cameras on our house. We're looking at the cameras to make sure there's no suspicious person. I got in a pursuit in front of my house, leaving my house one day because there was a car parked in front of our house that took off from me.
Wow.
And so my wife will regularly call me, hey, here's a license plate. There's this car across the street from our house I've never seen before. It's not, we know our neighbors. It's not any of their car, and it's been sitting there with the engine on with a guy inside. And it's always turned out to be nothing. But to think that you just see a car parked across from your house and you think it's somebody that wants to harm you means that we've gone off the road a little bit.
Trust.
And so I think that and many other things, people just are not choosing to be the police chief in major cities anymore. And so it'll be interesting. I mean, very similar to at the line level of people applying to be police officers. So, when people are thinking about their families, they have to now think, as police officers and as police chiefs especially, you have to think you want to put your family through the life of a police chief. And that was one thing 4 years ago when I started. It's a whole different thing now. Now it's like, before it was like long hours, missing a lot of stuff, having your phone by your head at night, and, being woken up at 2 a.m. and, a lot of stress and all that. Now it's, you want to deal with death threats. You want to deal with people coming to your personal home and protesting in front of your house and threatening to kill you. It's different now. And so it'll be interesting where we go over the next 4 or 5 years. We need good leadership. You look around the country, Carmen Best in Seattle, other chiefs in other cities who have left under these volatile circumstances that, I imagine you can find different opinions on them and me. But the ones I know were pretty progressive and were trying to implement things, and they got run off. And so it'll be interesting to see where we go over the next 4 or 5 years. Every walk of life, every profession needs good leadership and needs progressive leadership that is willing to look at themselves, willing to change, not the guy or gal that's going to say, well, we always did it like that, so therefore we're going to continue to do it like that. So we will see. It's a little concerning for me.
Yeah, yep. But you'll be watching it from afar, whatever those changes are.
Yep.
congratulations.
I'm not going. I'll still be here in my city. So.
Right. But you won't be involved in that aspect. So, congratulations
right.
on that. Yeah, I've got about four years, and then I'm calling it. So, I'll be right behind you. Yeah, I know it will.
It feels like yesterday I had FTOs telling me they had pencils older than me, and now I'm that pencil. So
now
it feels like it was yesterday. It went fast.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Chief. Well, thank you for stopping by and giving me some good knowledge and good insight, to our viewers. But you are not done yet. I like to play a little trivia game with my guests. I think you've you've participated in something like this before, so let me get this going here. This game here is called
Black or blue, 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 black or blue.
All right, so this game is called Black or Blue. Your category today is called Look Ma, I'm on TV. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a customer here, and then you just tell me, are they black? These are TV characters. Are they black, meaning a black civilian? Are they blue, meaning they're a non-black cop on TV? Or are they black and blue, like you and I, a black cop on TV?
Gotcha.
So that should be pretty easy for you. Your first character here is Barney Miller. Is he black, blue, or black and blue?
Blue.
Yes, Barney Miller is blue. From the 1-for-1. All right, from the show Barney Miller.
Old school now.
Old school. That was like the 70s. Yeah. All right. Next one here is about Harry Bosch. Harry Bosch.
I have no idea on that one.
Take a stab at it. Bosch. What do you think?
Harry Bosch.
B-O-S-C-H. Blue. Correct. Yes, Harry Bosch. I think that's Titus Weaver. That's a good show on Amazon. You might have a little bit of time.
See, I don't have Amazon. That's why I didn't know that one.
Yeah. It's a good show. It's from a book, though. I never read the book, but Bosch. It's a good show. So when you retire, you'll have some time to catch up on these on these shows. Here. How about your next one? Kyle Barker. Kyle Barker.
Wow, I don't know that one either.
I know you know this one. It's just slipping your mind.
I'll go Kyle. Black and blue.
Oh, that would be wrong. Kyle Barker, remember from Living Single, Kyle?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
The last name threw me off.
That last one threw you. Yep. That's all right. I only got one wrong here. How about William Bunk Moreland? Bunk. What was his nickname? Bunk. Pretty popular show on HBO a few years ago.
See, I don't have HBO. I'm going to say black.
He is black, but he's black and blue. William Bunk Moreland, detective from The Wire. Yeah, you remember Bunk?
See, I never saw The Wire.
Oh, you didn't? I just got turned on to it like during the pandemic, and I watched it. It was a good show.
Yep.
Actually, one of the actors just passed away the other day. I saw all over social media there. How about, you should be able to get this one, Steve Urkel.
Black.
Yes, he is black. You remember that show, Family Matters? Another one that'll probably throw you for a loop. How about Franklin Saint? This is from a new show that's out nowadays. Franklin Saint.
See, if it's not on ESPN, I probably don't know it. So I'll say black and blue, since we haven't had one of those yet.
Oh, no. From Snowfall. He's black. I don't know if you've seen this show.
Never even heard of that show.
Yeah, it's a good show. It's on Fox. Or FX on the cable version. Yeah, it's a good show. It's about the 80s and the crack epidemic. So he's an up and coming crack dealer. Franklin Saint. Yeah. How about Daniel Hondo Harrelson? Hondo.
Oh, that was Hondo is the sergeant in SWAT. So black and blue.
He is black and blue. Yes. Played by Shamar Moore. On the show now, I put 2017 on there because that's the new SWAT. You remember the one in the 70s? The one in the 70s, Hondo was a white dude. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was thinking of this one.
Yeah, and you got it. And you got it. So I had to make sure if you got it wrong that I was still going to credit you. A couple more here for you. How about Terry Jeffords? Terry Jeffords. Trying to give you a hint here. Terry.
Might be another new show.
But
Let's
Terry.
see, not black and not an officer, right? That was category, right?
Yeah, that would be black, but that would be wrong. He is black, and he is blue as well. Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Terry Crews plays Terry Jeffords on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Have you ever? I've never actually seen the show. I've seen the commercials, but I've seen the.
I mean, obviously, I know who Terry Crews is, but I haven't seen that show.
Yeah, that brother's so cut. Let me tell you.
Yep.
Couple more here for you. How about Rick Hunter? You got to remember that show. You don't remember Hunter?
Go with some old shows. Rick Hunter.
That is old. This show is old. This is the 80s. Hunter.
Is it? All right, so Police.
Yes, he is. Which is he? Is he blue? He's blue. Yes.
Blue.
Remember that show, Hunter?
Oh, I remember Hunter show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, see, if you
Hunter?
had said the show's name was Hunter, I would have remembered. I think.
True. Yeah,
That's Fred Dyer, right? He used to play for
Fred
the Rams,
Dyer,
defensive end.
Yep. You remember that. And two more here for you. These should be able to get you through. How about Vince Romano?
Vince Romano.
You might not know, but maybe that last name Romano.
That name sounds familiar. Yeah. Not blue and not black.
So that would be just straight black. Let's give it to you. You said he's blue. From T.J. Hooker, Vince Romano.
Hooker.
I was trying to throw you with the Romano last name is probably more of an Italian name.
Right.
What was dude's name? Adrian Zmed, I think. Yeah. Remember him?
I remember that.
And your last
Hooker,
one.
He could throw a baton and it could tackle somebody all by itself.
You remember that? What's the name? William Shatner with the toupee.
I never got that training in the academy. I
never got that one either.
I must have missed that class.
All right, how about your last one here? Michael Evans. This is old school.
Michael Evans.
Iconic
that's
family.
Not blue. It's black.
He is black. You remember Michael Evans?
Right? Yep.
Good times. Yep. You remember Michael Evans, little Michael Evans.
Yep.
I'm gonna say you got more right than you got wrong. Yes, you got more right than you got wrong. So let's call you the winner. All right, Chief.
Shocked you didn't have Shaft on there.
No, Shaft would have been easy. You would have gotten that one. Yeah. You would have gotten it. John Shaft. Everyone knows that one. You're damn right.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Chief. I appreciate you coming by. Anything you wanna leave with the audience before our audience before we go? Anything you wanna?
Just thank you for having me, and I can honestly say now that I'm winding my career down, it's been the best career I could ever had. So for those of you that are thinking about it, there's tough times going on right now, but it'll still be a very rewarding career.
That part, I agree. All right, Chief Hahn, I appreciate you. Be safe in your last few months here at the PD and beyond as well. I'm sure you'll figure out something to do. You're a highly respected man in the community. I'm sure you'll figure out something to do there. Maybe you can go in and teach with the wife.
Yeah. She teaches elementary school. I don't think I'm doing that.
No, you won't do that. You can go on not even high school. You're probably more of a college. That's more your speed, I'm sure. College, university. All right, Chief. I appreciate you again. Thank you for coming. Yep. Thank you.
Take care. Good luck.
Take care. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for this episode of the Black and Blue Podcast. I want to thank Sacramento, California Police Chief Daniel Hahn for taking some time out of his busy schedule to hang out with me here today. And I want to thank all of you, too, for taking time out of your busy schedules to listen to or watch this show. I'll be back in a couple weeks with another great guest, but till then, say it with me. Stay black and blue. I'll holler at you. Deuces.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.